Welcome cordially everybody at the panel which is going to present the Energy Atlas and to discuss it, what are the benefits of implementing in Poland renewable energy sources. My name is Dagmara Kubik and I am the activist of the Katowice smoke alarm, and that's why I was asked to moderate this meeting. Ladies and gentlemen, what is going to happen today? At the beginning there will be opening speech presented by Ellen Overshear. I hope I pronounce her name properly. We have exercised it, member of the board of the Heinrich Böll Foundation, then Annalisa Baerbock, chairperson of the Union 90 in Germany, and she's going to talk about the transformation which has been already taking place in Germany. And then Mr. Andrzej Kassenberg, who is co-founder of the Institute for Eco-Development, he will present you the Energy Atlas. Then we will have an opportunity to discuss a little bit, and there will be a panel discussion when Annalea and Andrzej will take part, and Marty Balou from DG Energy from the European Commission, and Joanna Maćkowiak-Pandera, the president of the Foundation of Energy Forum. These presentations will be interpreted simultaneously into Polish and English. The discussion panel will be an invitation for you to take part in the discussion concerning climate transformation. So, Ellen, please, the floor is yours.
A warm welcome from my side to all of you, dear Annalena, dear Marek. I don't know where he is around. Our friends from Marek from the Green Parties, welcome. And welcome to all the listeners and people who are watching the live stream. As you might know, Heinrich Böll Foundation, which is one of the publisher or published the Atlas, is closely related to the Green Party, and from my point of view, the Green Party in Germany has the biggest credibility in climate issues and in transition issues. And I hope this is not only in Germany, but also beyond Germany the case. We, as Heinrich Böll Foundation, we act globally and we act locally, in more than 30 countries around the world. We focus on human rights, on democracy, fostering democracy, and on ecology, and often means supporting environmental activists to foster human rights. These are two very closely linked issues that we are working on in several countries in the world. Supporting human rights activists, supporting environmental activists means to fight for people to breathe fresh air, to lead a healthy life, not to suffer from black lungs, and to experience the diversity of nature. I mean, these are human rights beyond Europe, but also within Europe. And locally, we have an office here in Poland and Warsaw. And I'm especially proud of our team in Warsaw who organized this event so thoroughly. We put much effort in strengthening the dialogue with all social actors here in Poland, from politics, economics, science, civil society, on the perspectives of a just transition, because that is what is, from our point of view, needed in Poland, but not only in Poland, also in the coal mining regions of Germany. Coal phase out, developing an energy democracy, that will be based on energy efficiency on the one hand side and on renewables on the other side. 3 years ago, perhaps you will find one of them also on the desk on the side. We published the coal atlas 3 years ago. The coal, but the black one. That someone is showing it. Thank you very much. And this was launched, right? The black one. This was launched at the Polish Sejm in 2016. It was widely read and successfully received internationally, but the Polish edition of the Atlas attracted particular attention from the broad public as the future of coal is increasingly discussed in Poland. Today, we going a step further and present the Polish edition of our Energy Atlas. And this is a very special moment, of course, and a very special time to present this during COP here in Katowice for developing global climate and energy policies. Katowice was once the center of Polish coal mining region. I mean, you still can smell it and feel it and see it, that it was the center and perhaps still is. I think from the heart and the minds of people, it still is the center and the heart of coal mining in Poland. But now it's often called the city of gardens. This is at least the direction into the city wants to change and has already taken actions. We will hear more about this from our Polish experts. I'm not an expert in that. But our Energy Atlas, to come back to this, is the next step forward towards a new energy narrative. With the Coal Atlas described the status quo and the challenges evolving from global fossil fuel energy system. The Energy Atlas shows what the sustainable future could look like. Our experts from Poland, from France, from Greece, from the Czech Republic and from Germany have created a complex picture of renewable energy sources and their potential across Europe. I admit that not every graph is really easy to understand, but it's really worth to go deep into it. And I was fascinated by 3 findings. The first was, yes, 100% renewable energy all over Europe is possible. And the question of whether Europe will switch to 100% renewable energy no longer depends on technology. We have these technologies. We can achieve this goal by 2050. Integrating the electricity, the heat, and the transportation sector will make it possible. Coupling the heating and transportation sectors to the power grid will also give rise to solutions to the problems of fluctuating power generation from solar and wind energy. This is a very loved argument by people who criticize the energy, the renewable energy scheme, because they always talk about in Germany it's Dunkelflaute. That means when it's dark outside and no wind. So they always have an argument. But this is no longer, if you think of coupling the sectors, this is not longer an argument. Second finding was 100% renewable energy is not significantly more expensive than the business as usual scenario. There is no denying it. Transforming the energy system will take significant investments, yes. But the transition to renewable energy also entails numerous benefits that often cannot be expressed adequately in purely economic terms. 100% renewable energy for Europe means greater energy security, lower environmental costs, lower healthcare costs, and new jobs. This is especially for coal mining regions an interesting point. And the third finding which struck me was energy transition opens opportunities for empowered European citizens to live a life of better quality. Energy poverty, this is the term under which this is discussed, very unevenly occurs throughout Europe. Many Europeans cannot take a warm home for granted. Renewable energy can break this cycle of poverty, debt and cold with its serious health and social consequences. There are scattered moves around Europe to involve citizens in the transformation of the energy system, but there is potential, and that shows the atlas, there is potential for more. 125 million citizens could participate in European wind and solar power generation if we managed to set the right political course for this today. I was fascinated by these findings. There are more, and we will hear more about this, but I'm, of course, concerned at the same time. The challenge is big to reach this new European energy scheme, and I'm concerned about the political braveness and will that has been put together to make this sound plan. I mean, it's a sound plan to think of a fossil-free Europe, but to make this really happen and to meet at least the Paris the agreement, the needs of the Paris Climate Agreement. The energy transition is already underway. Renewable capacity has increased in the European Union by 71% over the last 10 years. However, energy transition is happening at different speeds across the continent, and lack of cooperation is a major issue of my concerns. In Germany especially, we have often neglected this European dimension of the transition to renewable energy, and we're busy with our own energy legislation. But now it's time to catch up, and the Energy Atlas fills exactly this gap. I'm well aware of how much effort is needed to convince the majority of Europeans, especially in Central Europe, under the current political circumstances, to take this vantage point of a fossil-free, fresh-aired and healthy Europe. Despite all my concerns about backlashes and standstills in decarbonizing the energy sector, let alone the other sectors, I stay hopeful from two reasons. The first is, look around, despite all intimidation and despite excessive police presence, the climate march took place here in Katowice, and the activists put pressure on negotiators. That's good, we need that. It gives me hope, and I'm especially hopeful because I know that we have wonderful partners here in Poland. Above all, the Institute for Sustainable Development, and that's why I thank Wojciech Szymalski, who isn't here at the moment, but Energii Kassenberg, who sits next to me, for the successful and fruitful cooperation on this project. And I would also like, of course, to thank Joanna for contributing to the Atlas from the Forum Energii, I Krzysztof Grzegorz-Polski, now I have the problems with names, from the Warsaw School of Economics, for their contributions to the Atlas. With this Atlas, especially with its Polish edition, we want to contribute to an open and informed discussion of the European energy transition, whilst advancing this ambitious European project that unites European citizens. This can really one of the uniting issues. The Atlas has been published in Germany first, in English. We plan issues in Spanish, in Greek, and in Czech as well, in order to broaden this discussion really around Europe. And that's why I'm very happy that we can discuss these issues now here on this panel during Katowice, like a kairos, to speak to the people who took part in the pilgrimage. And I thank Dagmara for moderating this panel and handing over the word. Thank you very much.
Thank you a lot, Anna. And now we shall move to the next speech. This one will be presented by Anna Bargow, who will speak about transformation in Germany.
Thank you very much. Warm hello and good morning also from my side. I would like to begin a thank to the Heinrich Böll Foundation for publishing this atlas, because I think what you can see here already on the picture is that the promise of Paris, which is to have a world with 100% of renewable energy, does only function and work when we integrate our energy system all over Europe. And the European Union is the best place to do it because we have already an internal market. Therefore, an internal market for renewable energy is also possible. And I was asked to give a bit of ideas from the German side because we started in Germany with the Renewable Energy Act 15 years ago, how we can broaden this picture all over Europe, knowing that we started in Germany, but unfortunately we are not the front runner anymore. Maybe it's not so much unfortunately because it's good that everybody is very active now in renewable energy, but if you look at the numbers and my partner here on the right side from the European Commission can maybe say more about it, but if we look at the numbers, other countries, not only in the north of Europe, but especially also in the south of Europe, has even bypassed Germany with renewable energy, especially in the heating system. So my part here is not to say, okay, look what Germany has done and copy and paste now, but more what we can learn from Germany, from the past, from the current times, and actually how we can fulfill the promise of Paris of 100% renewable Europe. And I would like to give 3 points to this debate. First of all, I believe that it's very important for every transformation that you have a positive story. We as a Green Party, not only in Germany, but from our foundation, always struggle with this positive dimension of transformation because there are always moments when you say, look, the world is going down, we have to do something to create momentum. But actually to bring power behind a movement, to bring power behind a whole transformation process, you need not only a small group, but you need many people within society. You need the civil society. You need people who believe in this transformation process. And I think this is really the success of the renewable energy, that there was a positive momentum of saying we can rebuild our energy system. And not only with new technologies, getting rid of fossil fuels and saying we can use the sun, which is shining luckily now, we can use the wind, but also saying we can give back power to the people. This was one of the strongest arguments in the whole transformation process in the beginning of the shift, because it was not only the green NGO movement who say, okay, we want to produce our energy by ourselves. It was only the farmers in the conservative Bavaria who say, well, this is great, we can produce now our own energy actually on our little farm. And I think this is very important when we talk about the transformation all over the world. Here are also friends from Africa, from other small regions all over the world, where islands actually say, well, we don't need the imports of fossil fuels anymore. We can use the sun here at our own island to produce our own energy. And this was the whole thinking behind the Renewable Energy Act, of saying, how can we give actually every person, every individual the chance of producing its own energy. And that's why this Renewable Energy Act was maybe the most successful export story of Germany, because the legislation was copied in 15 countries all over the world as a legislative act, where other countries said, okay, we also copy the system of feed-in tariffs, because in the beginning you always need a subsidized for new technologies. And unfortunately, many countries copied it very successfully, and at the same moment in Germany, due to political changes, Germany kind of took a step backwards and said, we put a ceiling on our renewable energy. We have many debates all over the world where people ask me, well, you started with renewable energy, but kind of you are stagnating right now. Is there a problem there's not too much wind anymore in Germany? No, the wind is still blowing, even though, because unfortunately we have also now hurricanes due to the climate crisis. But the problem is that by political reason, it's not a question of technology, the current government and the last government decided we don't want to have so much renewable energy anymore. That's why we put a ceiling on the tender. And that's why we are kind of stuck with 38% of renewable energy in the electricity market, which is very important, because if we take together the heating and the electricity market, we are really in the middle, if not in the lower bottom of the European Union, because especially in the south there are so many heating systems with renewable energy, where we in Germany just started. So the important thing for me is, if we talk about transformation, we need a positive momentum, and we need to give people the possibility to take part in this transformation process. The second point is that we shouldn't be afraid anyhow about the phasing out story. The problem in Germany is that we have high numbers of renewable energy, but unfortunately we still have high numbers of CO2 emissions. Our emissions in Germany, they didn't decline. They increased, or at least they stagnated over the last 10 years. And this is due to the fact that the last government didn't dare to talk about the phase out of coal. But if we just produce more electricity by renewable energy, then we are exporting energy. And this was also one of the big discussions a couple of years ago together with Poland, that the Polish government, or even like electricity providers, said, well, this doesn't work. You cannot produce more renewable energy, and every time your grid is full, you just use our grid. So it had also a dimension about how we think about our neighbors, and Ellen was mentioning this already. You cannot just say we do an energy transformation only in Germany, ignoring that we are highly interconnected already with our neighbors in France, but also on the Polish side. So the not phasing out of coal is a big problem, and everybody knows it here already at the COP, that we are still stuck in this trap. So I would say for every new transformation region, also here in Poland, we have to be very open and frank in the beginning of saying, if we have more renewable energy, this means on the other side, we are stepping back on fossil fuels. And if you start this debate very early in the beginning, then we have also the chance of talking about a just transformation, because talking about what happens to the people being employed in the coal sector at the moment. And this is the biggest challenge we are still facing in Germany. We have now a coal commission which is discussing about these kind of things, and now we have to take a lot of public money, which is very important, public money in our hands to actually do this just transformation, because we started way too late. If we would have started 10 years ago, energy companies wouldn't have started to employ people at the age of 25 again in coal mines, but they would have said, okay, we need new employment fields. And my third point is the European point of saying we have to think the energy transformation together as a European project. Also within our Green Party, sometimes we have discussions about it, because I started with decentralized energy systems. I think this is still right. We have to think about local systems of energy. But if you want to fulfill really the goal of Paris, meaning 100% renewable energy, I come from Brandenburg, where we have still coal mines, where we have high energy production. We have also in the future high energy production or electricity production by windmills. But all the industry is unfortunately not in my region. It's in Western Germany and in Southern Germany. So it's obviously that we need a strong grid in Germany to transform energy. And it's also obviously that we have times in Germany when we don't have enough renewable energy. And we are highly dependent from our neighbors that we have a stable grid. Because if we don't reach the promise of saying we have 100% energy security all over the year, this whole Paris Agreement won't work. So in the end, we need a European system with strong decentralized region, but we have to be interconnected all together, and there's still a lot of work to do. And I think the only way of fulfilling this promise is if we think about this renewable energy union as a new target for the EU. The EU was founded 70 years ago as a project for peace based on an interconnection between nuclear and coal. And now is a century where we can say we built this great project of a peaceful Europe on the feet of a renewable energy union. This has to be a climate union. And a climate union which is still, because this is also the second pillar of the EU, a strong internal market, an internal market of economies. And we have to think these two things together, renewable union and a strong economy. And we had a chance already in Marrakesh 2 years ago when the US decided to have a new leader who was saying already from the beginning, we say no to Paris. And Europe was asked at the conference in Marrakesh, do you step up now? Are you the new leader for the climate movement? And Europe said yes, but it didn't deliver. And China was stepping up now with renewable energy. And India, yeah, you were mentioning India as well. Not only for climate region, but because they saw the market. They saw the chance to bypass the US, but also to bypass the European Union as a strong economy. And I believe if we see this together, the chance that we can build a European Union as a green economy, then we find the partners, which I was talking about in the beginning as well. We need the partners also from the economy, also from the financial side, who say we stand up for this European Union altogether. Because it's not only about a climate policy for Europe, it's about the climate policy which will bring the European Union as an economy and as an industry to the 21st century. And we still have a chance to do this. And the good thing is, which I learned in the beginning this morning, that it's not again Germany who has to lead this movement if we bring the industry on a green track. Because unfortunately, we have done this with renewable energy, but on the transport track, we totally missed the whole story. And here in Poland, you have, with Solaris, for example, a company who produces now buses, e-buses, which will be exported to Düsseldorf, because our companies in Germany, they missed this point. So actually, when we think of Europe as a green economy, it also gives new chances to countries which haven't been the industry countries in the past, but who have now a momentum of saying, okay, Europe is not just strong on industry side because of Germany and some other countries, but because every country can play its part. The southern countries, when they think about renewable energy and heating, the eastern countries, when we think about renewable energy for transport sector, and countries like Germany, when we think about renewable energy in the electricity sector. And if we take this all together, we have really the chance of bringing together up to the Paris promise of a carbon-free Europe in 2050, and bringing it up to the promise of the European Union, a European Union with social justice and an air which you can breathe every day in your life. And I think it's a great start to do it here in Katowice. So thanks for this panel.
Thank you very much. And now Mr. Kassenberg will present a little bit more closely the Energy Atlas. Good morning, everybody. Welcome cordially. I would like to start with just saying, what is this atlas? What is the difference between it and many other publications which might be found in the internet or meet at the conference? For me, this atlas is an elementary book. Is the first lesson which about the way which we should treat the question of energy in the EU, renewable energy, because that's the energy of future. And let me just say in a very short way, because I haven't got enough time, but I would like just to mention a few words about this atlas which might make it interesting for you. I will start with it that we have to state clearly that in spite of many difficult situations that we have in the European Union, cooperation within the field of energy has been developed already for a long time. Even before the European Union was created, there were already some moments of cooperation of Western countries, Western states. So we have already acquired certain experiences, and we have to make a step forward. What has just been said, to build a European perspective of green energy, which will confine the emissions and which will allow us to think about the future for our children and grandchildren, and I've got 6 grandchildren, so it's very important for me. So we want to have 100% renewable sources of energy. If we start to think in the categories to phase out subsidies concerning energy generated from fossil fuels, and we support the renewables, and if we take into account also external costs, then it is the cheapest energy possible, in spite of the fact that the EU spends 3 times more of energy generated by fossil fuels than by renewables. It's a sort of question that has to be changed. Construction of infrastructure, it's interesting. And I'm going to talk about small local systems, small hybrid systems based on renewables. But if you want to have it, to make it function all over Europe, then we need grids. For example, when in Spain they have sun and we have no sun in Poland, then we may take advantage of Spanish energy and vice versa. So it's completely different world connected with energy management, which I'm going to talk about. Another point, which in my opinion is the key point, in my opinion, it should be at the beginning of any policy concerning energy, it is efficiency and saving energy, because if we prepare it in a proper way, then the money spent for it will not be necessary for the new power capacity. We all the time think to build like it was in the socialist time. So let's start thinking in which way we may conserve the energy, save the energy. So until 2050 it will be possible to cut the demand for energy by half. So it is a possibility to increase the quality of life with much lower energy consumption. Local systems, that's this energy democracy, that people start to be responsible for energy safety, not the state, but just the society, and it should go together hand in hand. And that's the new view of the energy safety and new business models. I'm fascinated with the cooperation of Philips with Schiphol airport in Amsterdam. Philips sold to the airport the lighting system, and the airport pays for it. So it is the question for Philips to think about conservation of energy and to have the best possible management system of energy, because it's then to cut the energy costs. What is the key today to solve for solution of problems connected with climate changes, the towns, cities, municipalities, they are the strongest partners who may introduce and implement changes also in their energy, in the renewables. So there are various types of cooperatives. So anyway, we have to open the chance for the society to cooperate with us and to make them feel responsible for the energy. The world that exists today is a world of information. We have even too much information, but that is also a chance for us because it opens possibility to change the energy management system, because we may have the solutions which allow, in spite of the fact that we have millions of small energy installations and not 5 great power stations, that flexibility of the system will be maintained, and that when there is no sun, we'll be prepared for solve it. And if you have suddenly sun, then we are prepared also. So the new IT systems allow us for it. So it is the question of management of blockchains and various other technologies that may be used today, utilized today. The EU was leader, but it would like to be still the leader, although eco-innovations at a chance to come back to the leading position. That's something what I see in many countries. It was mentioned already here that we think not only about the question of climate and the environment, and it is the cost, that it is so difficult to spend money for it. It's a new market, it's a new opportunity to build entrepreneurship, to create new jobs, and to use this competitive edge. And we have to think about it in these categories when we think about changes in climate and adaptation to it, and also the question of smog, which is so close to this city of Katowice and to the region. 54% of the energy in the EU is imported. It's a lot. It will be less, but it is still too much. Sometimes it depends upon one partner, but it's also dependent upon the states which are not stable, which are difficult to anticipate. That's why this direction, local systems and renewables, it creates a local safety, energy safety system. And at the end of this EU part, because later on I will come back to Poland, so the new jobs that we create, they are different than in mining, less risky. They are friendly jobs. I will tell you a short story why young people in Poland do not want to go to work for the mining industry. Because it's difficult to survive 8 hours without the mobile phone and computer. That's also an interesting challenge. So the energy poverty, which was mentioned here, depending upon the countries, it's from 10 up to even 20% of citizens that are touched by it, so they cannot pay for all the bills for their heat and electricity supply. It's also a problem in Poland. We have to cooperate also with the countries beyond the EU and to encourage them for such transformation. It's also a big role for the EU. And about Poland now, just before COP, there was a new document launched in Poland, Polish energy policy until 2040. It is not the document of energy policy, it is the document which will keep the power sector based on the coal in Poland. Today in Poland we have 78% of our energy is based on the coal, and then the amount of coal will be the same even if it is less as regards percentage. The document which says about development of the both hard coal and lignite. The document was prepared by the government but against the law because it was without any analysis of the environmental impact. So these analyses should not be approved. It is the same goes for the program of energy policy, for which also the strategic environmental impact assessment was not prepared. We have also very serious problem with development of renewables in Poland, because renewables in Poland in the government documents is treated in such a way that we have to fill it to meet the expectations of the EU. And so sometimes I think whether it is Moscow or Brussels, there is not a big difference. But Brussels, that's me. The EU, that's we, not they. Let's stop cheating ourselves. If we are not in place, if we turn our back to them, then we have to approve it, to accept it, and it's becoming obligatory for us. If we do not have this 15% until 2030, then it may cost us 8 billion zloty. This what is ongoing with the wind energy in Poland. That's very strange, because it has been developed in Poland, it has been promoted, and then in 2016 it was just blocked. So the companies that built or they generated energy were bankrupted because of the distance from the windmills. So we take a step back and we withdraw from something what is very interesting. On 25th December and 2040, 20% should be produced from the wind farms. But we think about the wind farms in the sea. Are we really ready to build at least one wind farm on the seaside till 2025? We talk about construction of nuclear power stations. So it is the same model, practically large-scale energy, large-scale power plants. But what is the safety then? If there is such a concentration of energy, let's say something goes wrong, or there is terrorist attack, even if it is only digital attack, then what's that? Who is going to attack 10,000 small installations instead of one big nuclear power station? And construction of power in nuclear power plant is very expensive, and it's impossible to build it until 2033, as it is said in the plans. We do not have still the idea how to finance it, who is going to construct it, where to construct it, what will be the grids, and so on. We just have an empty space, and I think that it will never get off the ground, although it's said that 6 to 9 gigawatts should be generated by nuclear power. So coming to the end. We are just at the crossroad. We have still chance. We do not have too many coal-fired power stations. We may just withdraw from it to make just transformation. I am not worried with the miners here, because the miners will find easily new jobs in new companies. It will be much more difficult in Bełchatów or Konin, where we have big lignite, where there is no way to find other jobs, and lignite is also going to be depleted. And then there is the idea to open a new open cast mine and to transport lignite, and lignite transport is a key issue. Only from transport emission of greenhouse gases is 30% by year increase. So I don't know what will be with so-called non-ETS. Electromobility is a certain solution. If it is based on the energy mix, then the emission will not decrease but will grow. Whether it is electric car or diesel car, it takes space. So the concept should be the chains of eco-mobility, so using legs, bicycles, public transport, and we should also move this way in the eco-deliveries chain, because that's much more important. Small electric vans in the cities instead of large cars, e-cars. I do not believe that there will be 1 million e-cars in a few years, as it was said by the Prime Minister. So the energy efficiency, we may save 30–35% of energy in a profitable way, and want to build new enormous coal-fired power stations, and it will cost us. So the power market, we have already to spend money for this market, and there will be great development of individual prosumers stations. Then we will have to pay back the money for which we built the new power plants, which will not be profitable anymore. That's a great threat and challenge which we should take into consideration. The Energy Forum were 4 scenarios were presented. If we take coal scenario close to our government, it is decreased by 7% of emission. If it is renewables, then by 84% decrease in emissions at the same costs. And how many costs we will avoid and how many advantages we will have. No. And how many bad advantages we will have. That's what's ahead of us, and we should take advantage of it. We have money for it. So my rough estimate, it's 70 billion zloty, 50 to 100% billion from emission trading. If we want to make a program which will concern renewables, thermomodernization, energy poverty, and the roofs, we all do it separately, and we should prepare it in a comprehensive way. How much we may save? 210 billion zloty, and smoke costs us 110 billion per year, and so many premature deaths. as many premature deaths as we have the number of miners in Poland. Shouldn't we think about it? So the renewables, may bring big benefits in transport, clean cities, energy, safety, and possibility of production, various installations, and taking advantage of the land for various energy projects. That is a great chance for us, a great opportunity. It's an opportunity for young people. Please remember whom you are voting for, who is for renewables, who is for democracy, for local safety. That's your choice.
Yes. So important everyday choices. Thank you a lot. Thank you a lot, Andrzej. Thank you. And now I'm thinking about various things at a time. I wonder what to say first. What was very strong in all these three speeches is that we can look what is going on with the climate as a crisis. Undoubtedly is a crisis, but what is pronounced, what gives hope, that we can look at it as a challenge, as opportunity, how to benefit from that opportunity. And I'm very glad that we had a very positive accent. And now we shall move to discussion. The first part will be a discussion and answers of our panelists to questions. It will be about 30 minutes. And then we shall open to the common discussion, to the conversation about all the issues. It will be also about 30 minutes. And I will tell how the process will look like. We shall collect questions. We shall ask to make speeches not longer than 1 minute. I will keep an eye on it, not to exceed 1 minute. And we shall take about 3 questions from the audience, and we shall answer collectively as much as we have time. So moving to the discussion part and the common conversation about green energy, transition to green energy is a great challenge. We could see wonderful benefits, but it's a challenge to countries and to societies to make it to introduce in life. I'm thinking about such locations as Poland, Silesia. It was, Anna, in your speech that there are benefits, but there is Silesia, the miners' life, people who work at coal mines. It is not only their job, it's whole life, whole tradition, whole cities were erected around coal mines. How to conduct it in such a way that these people won't be victims of the transformation? You spoke about it, but I would like to stress that very important aspect. There are benefits, but there are also the risks. And you promised that by 2050 we want to achieve a neutral balance for climate. How realistic is for Poland in our country? How that process would look like to have it realistic, and how to take account of cultural and social aspects, how to take care about these people. It is an opening question. I'm inviting to answer the question. Ladies and gentlemen, I will comment a film, a movie we made, we launched and Dr. Wilczyński said about it, where he says the era of stone era did not finish because it was lack of stone. Just new technologies appeared, and we are just in such a moment. Either we can take benefit and we jump onto the train, we shall build such an economy and we encourage people that they would prosumance. We have great opportunities, we have great chances to say in 2050 we are very close to that zero emission development of European Union. And now I will try to answer whether it is possible when we can manage. In 2002, there was a great transformation in mining industry. It was a giant work, and please imagine that there was no strikes. None. The question is how to do it now. I think, and it's my personal opinion, that the main issue is not miners that work underground, because if they have perspectives to be laid out, to move to new businesses, and it is in place and it is possible, the main problem is the establishment of trade unions. If someone was 20, 30 years and trade unionist, where he can find a job. And it is the most serious problem, how to persuade, how to reach these people, how to achieve the transformation. It won't happen during one night, but if you say we have 15, 20 years for such a transformation, we can do it. Please see, we have an example in Poland. It's Lower Silesia coal basin that moved away from the coal. They keep the tradition, but they stopped production of coal. And I think such a program, which is proposed by WWF, it is prepared by Visa Europe, such clever but long-term living from the and we spent huge money for coal mining. 230 billion Polish zloty from subsidia. Other 7 billion has already been approved by the government. And external cost, these health costs, they are nearly 1 trillion Polish zloty. Look how much we lost. It is how we should speak, how we should build our program for a dozen of years, definite but controllable process of coal shutdown. But please do not build a power station in Opole, other new power station, because we are going to a deep asshole that will be at a matter of orphanage costs. We shall pay it and our grandchildren. Thank you a lot. Yes. And now it was a very strengthening speech. I like thinking about it. How tomorrow we shall have green energy and we have it in place. Perspective of a dozen of 20 years is very strengthening, and we have location in Poland where it happened. If I can add, yes, please. Just transition has a broader dimension. Here in Poland, we had a lot of transformation. For instance, after agriculture or the textile industry in which many industrial areas were transformed, but they are very bad examples of how we shouldn't carry out the transformation, where companies and factories are closed from one day by day, and nobody thinks about the region in the long-term perspective. And just transition is very important, but we should also think how the just transition is not that we do not want to breathe with contaminated air, because it's impossible, because there is a professional group in Poland that we have to support in a very tangible form, not a very long-term aspect. It's not the matter that it's not only a problem of coal, it's a problem of new technologies and challenges related to modernization, reduction of emission, not only CO2, but also air pollutant. And it is what is missing for me in the discussion. So thinking about the energetic transformation, power transformation, we should also start talking about expenses, how to share the expenses, because energetic poverty is a problem. It touches 12% of society, and we cannot say that it doesn't matter whether someone will pay 300 zloty more. For Warsaw citizens is nothing, but for many people, for poor people, poor citizens, it's a real problem. So just transformation is, as the mission, how we share the expenses. Relating to your question whether it is possible, yes, of course, but it is also the matter of expenses. Of course, how the faster we want to transform the system, the more we will have to spend, and it is important to avoid spending money for things that will be useless in 20 years. So it is why we should have long-term objectives, because they are not very popular in Poland. Because if you establish an objective, the opponents they question why, what for, and we start anew. And I think in that energy policy there are some interesting ideas. For instance, how to quit from lignite to brown coal, and we shall lose 10 gigawatts of power, and it's very important next year what to do with power plant in Bełchatów, what to do with the region, and how we can feel. It is one thing, it is the job, and the second, the power system. Obviously, nuclear power won't fill the gap after the lignite. Everyone understands who checks the discussion. Even we couldn't find the location for the nuclear power plant. And I think it is the first component of the discussion about just transition. The first issue is the future of that areas, post-lignite areas. It's also Poland-German topic, because Poland, Germany and Czechia have problems with lignite. It is a very interesting idea how we can coordinate, because German look at Polish look at German, and they mutually try to define each other, and there's a competition. I know the beauty competition or jealousy competition, but it will affect the power of electricity onto climate in Europe, and this is the next idea. So I would like to stress that just transition is the idea to cover with support, financial support to all who are in poverty, who need it. There are supports, but there was a report that said that nobody uses it, just without very ridiculous money, and they are spent in not many cases, and it is a key factor how to construct the program for the poorest societies, not only to support the spending for electricity, for power, but also to develop energy efficiency and eliminate the heat sources that are the most contribution to smog. And I think it is the second topic. First is Bełchatów, but if we speak about just transition, but it is also the distribution of costs or expenses to the poorest, because in 1 year or in 2 we shall end up like in France, and we would like to avoid it. Thank you.
For me, it's also an important element of costs, how to divide these costs in a just way. I like it very much that it is a beauty contest between Poland and Germany as regards the climate. And so when we think about cooperation, Polish-German cooperation, then I would like to give the microphone to you so that you may refer to it, which way this cooperation may be helpful, which way in Poland and in the partnership.
Well, I think, for example, if you look at the region of Lausitzia, it is like on both sides of the Oder, it's the same challenge. We have still discussion if we open a new lignite mine on the east side of the Oder and also on the west side of the Oder, where I'm from. And the crucial point now is, do we invest the money in opening new lignite mines, or do we invest money in transforming these companies, these energy companies, who are there currently producing electricity? And yeah, maybe the colleague from the Commission will tell him more about the transformation regions in Europe, where the EU is thinking of supporting these coal regions. And this is especially also what we are debating now in Germany, that we need support for these regions where still a couple of people are being employed. I want to step for a moment aside of giving some numbers, because I think this is very important in the debate when we speak about employment. In Germany, currently, we have more than 300,000 jobs in the renewable energy sector, and now we are talking about the phasing out of lignite mines, where currently 20,000 people are being employed. To just have like the numbers we are talking about. Anyhow, because what you were mentioning with regard to the trade union, these are jobs which have strong trade unions behind them, which is good because they fought for employers' rights and also good income in these jobs. So now the question is, how do we keep these energy companies in the region and helping them to transform to energy companies of the futures? And this is a thin line, because I mean they gained money on the market, which exploiting the grounds, and now we help them for the transformation. But I think to have successful stories, it is also in the sense of the state and in the sense of the public of say we support these companies, but we need strong regulation on this, because we cannot say we give you money and then we see after 5 years you have gone. We have a couple of examples of unsuccessful transformation processes in Europe. Like in the year of the 2000s with the globalization, the EU even put up a globalization fund for those companies who moved, for example, Nokia from Finland to Germany and then to Romania. And there they got public support, EU money, and then 5 years later they moved on. This is the wrong track. But if we say you get money for transformation, but you have to stay in the regions and you have to give a guarantee for the jobs, I think we have successful storages. And for example, the LEAG, which is now the coal company in Lausitzia on the German side, they have the investor from the Czech side, so it's already a European thing. We can say, okay, if you transform into a company which produces renewable energy, but also storage, because they have experience in energy, they are already in a region where you have a lot of energy, this would be a successful story. However, and then it becomes very political, I believe that you cannot say, okay, the market will do the job. You need strong policy regulation on the question, so when do we close the lignite mines? Also on the Polish side, if we give money for transformation, you have to have a guarantee that you have a phase out for the coal. So, and this has to be a law. And on the second part, you have to have a strong regulation on the markets, on the price for CO2 emissions, because otherwise some of the industry won't be successful if the price for CO2 is so low. And this is again on the European level. I would say we need a floor price from at least 40 euro per ton CO2 starting at the moment, because we have also the other sectors like steel producing companies. They can be successful only in the transformation if they see a business case, and the business case needs that we internalize the cost of CO2 in the whole production price, because at the current state of art we don't have a fair market, and that's why the whole market system doesn't work at the state of art. But if we do this transformation together also with the companies, with a strong regulation, we can secure the jobs. And the last point I would like to make, also for the region of Katowice, I would say it would be wrong to look only at the big old fossil companies, because the challenge all over Europe in these regions is the question of employment and like weak structural infrastructure in the social sphere and small companies. If we look to my region in Katowice, 8,000 people being employed in the lignite mines, but we have like small, how do you say, like people who paint the houses, Handwerker. Painter, yeah, not painter, the Handwerker in general. Malarz in Polish, so you need the English translation. So small firms, they have like 10 employments, but 7,000 of them, they don't find the next generation to take over the business. If you calculate them all together, 7,000 employers, like with painters or like building houses or like doing the small jobs, having 10 employers, we are talking about 70,000 people in this region compared to 8,000 in the coal. So you have to see the bigger picture, in my point of view, not only how do we replace jobs in the coal, but how do we secure the small enterprises, like small and medium-sized enterprises in this region. So you need a whole strategy for employment in structural weak regions, and I think the EU can play really a strong part in this whole game.
Bardzo dziękuję. Tak. Ja tak dużo czerpię z naszej rozmowy.
Thank you very much. I am not specialist, but still it's very useful discussion for me when you think about people, leading people. So which way we should carry out the policy so that we keep the companies in the place and even develop them, and to have strong regulations which will support this process. Then now this European dimension, what the EU may do, what the European Commission may do in order to create a framework for such regions which we have in Poland.
Dziękuję bardzo, dziękuję za zaproszenie.
The European point of view, when I think about just transition, there are three dimensions that we can address. One is to set a clear direction, to really show where we want to be eventually. Then there's the dimension of the new good models that we want to promote on the way to that objective. And the third dimension is taking care that we leave no one behind, that we support the ones who would have to change their fundamental practices in that transformation. So the first one is one thing the EU does and is good as, actually, is to set collective targets, collective ambitions. We had targets for 2020, for the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions, for renewable energy, for energy efficiency. We have new targets since this year for 2030. And last week, we adopted, the European Commission presented a new strategy with a vision to make Europe climate neutral by 2050. It's a vision, it's a pathway to something, but we should not underestimate how powerful a signal that is. If you know that by 2050, the whole EU economy should not emit more greenhouse gas emissions than it retains and absorbs, it means that already now massive transformations have to start, and it forces you to think about, should I really put my money in that big infrastructure, which in 10 years will be completely obsolete if we want to change our business models? So that first dimension is, and it's a collective ambition. So it's also about acting faster where it's easier, but making sure that all contribute to their fair share. And that's also important. It also means that if we agree collectively on an ambition, each member state has to take that collective ambition seriously, and each one has to do really as much as they can. And that will be a question when all member states of the EU will present their national energy and climate plans, their own vision to 2050. Is that compatible with a climate neutral Europe by 2050? That will be a job for us. The second point is that supporting the new models. This year, again, very recently, we adopted new legislation to support renewable energy. And there are two elements that I would like to mention quickly because I think they are important here. The first one, I heard the word democracy here. It's about energy consumers. You know, we don't want to think that things are imposed from Brussels and they come out of the mind of mad technocrats who've never seen Poland. If we want the change to happen, it has to be accepted, it has to be driven locally, especially. So among the things that we are promoting in the new legislation, there are two concepts. One of them is renewable energy communities. It's similar to what is happening, for instance, in cities in Germany, or the model of renewable energy cooperative. It's really people coming together and deciding to share the production and share the benefits of their production of clean energy. And another one is that all countries in the European Union will have to support the self-consumption models. That is to say that you can produce your energy, you can store it, you can sell it without any discrimination. So that will be law in the European Union, and we hope to be able to support really new models through that and increase the acceptance. And the other aspect is the administrative simplification and the certainty. We mentioned, for instance, feed-in tariffs, and that there were sometimes victims of their success. If you start paying everyone for the development of renewable energy, it can become a big constraint on budgets. But the bad impact that it has is that in many countries, in Southern Europe, but also in Germany, these schemes have been stopped, and suddenly the markets suffered. Investors thought, okay, is it safe to invest in renewable energy anymore? So we really want to put an end to that and promote certainty, but also simplification. In Poland, there is that rule of the height limit, which means that you are not allowed to install a windmill in a radius of 10 times its height, which makes it virtually impossible to develop onshore wind power. The European Court of Justice is currently assessing whether this is disproportionate. In general, it's important to have a good investment framework for all that, and that will mean that naturally renewable energy will come because it is completely cost competitive. But then the last bit is the transition, how to leave no one behind. So there, concretely, the EU launched last year an initiative dedicated to coal regions in transition, where on the one hand we are promoting projects. So we are asking regions to come up with projects with dedicated support. And for the region of Silesia, for instance, 120 million euro of regional funds have been allocated specifically to that transition. But we will also create a space of dialogue so that all regions can learn from each other. Because it's similar challenges. It's the challenges of retraining the workers. It's challenges about creating alternative businesses. But the good point there is that we know that clean energy actually needs many more jobs than coal, for instance, than fossil energy. And it's not only in coal that we see that. In the Netherlands, for instance, there was the political decision to quit gas. The Netherlands was a big producer of gas in the North Sea, but it caused earthquakes, and in general they also felt that it was time to move on, and they really cut it. They estimate that I think 3,000 to 5,000 jobs will be lost in the gas industry. But on the other hand, that 50,000 new jobs will be required in the clean energy sectors to compensate for that. So those are the good news on that side. So on this coal regions initiative, we have 6 country teams, 1 for Poland. We have regional teams, and we really bring regularly all players together, NGOs, trade unions, companies, regional authorities, etc., to talk together and develop new models and proposals on how to support that. I'll stop that, but all questions are welcome.
Bardzo dziękuję.
It is what was strong.
Z jednej strony taka wizja, tak? Że
It's a vision that by 2020 we shall reach the neutral.
What can I do as the investor? I'm not going to invest in something what will disappear in 10, 20 years, the natural process. And what's also important for me is there the words about the word democracy, that the people have to participate in it. It's impossible to introduce changes without participation of the society, and the European Union thinks about it, how to involve local communities into the whole process. Now I would like to talk, to have a more general discussion about it, about the structure, but please no more than 1 minute. So I will ask 3 persons to take the floor and then to leave enough time for the panelists to refer to the questions. So please, the floor is yours. Good morning. Thank you very much for a very interesting discussion. I would like to refer to the comments which were mentioned in your speeches, particularly these ones which refer to what the pessimists say very often, that the renewable energy depends upon the atmospheric conditions. So we spoke about development of the infrastructure, so to send energy not from one region to another, but from one state to another. But the golden grail for the renewables, it would be storage of energy. And then within the context of not only generation of renewables, but also the ways of their storage, to somehow to make it more sustainable. Which way we should go as regards this aspect? What is your opinion? So it means which way we might carry out this process of energy storage so that it makes it independent from the atmospheric conditions. So apart from developing renewables, how we should also develop the way of its transmission, but also storage. There are large storage facilities in Australia or Tesla. So on which way, for example, the European Commission will support this part of the sector, which is compatible and closely connected, so that in the future, in 2050, we are eventually neutral, environmentally neutral.
Zapraszamy drugie pytanie.
So we ask
Proszę.
for the further questions. So the Green Party, I have the question to Alena. What is the role, because it's a great revolution of renewables, which was the role in it of the Green Party in Germany? Was it possible, would it be possible without the Green Party?
I trzecie pytanie.
And the third question. I am already retired, and so I had some time to read about the global warming, but I am not connected. I am a metal engineer. the general impression from this discussion, from the presentations, I see a certain discrepancy, that it means that we do not have any more perspective 2050. It's a perspective which is already past, and we have to take into account the words which were spoken here, they are in discrepancy with what I read in the literature or in the internet. So that's first question. The second one is what was said, that we are at the collision course. This collision between these ones who have fantastic development. Every day our Prime Minister talks about our economic growth, GDP, but I think that there is so the GDP cannot be growing constantly. Perhaps that's enough.
Czy jest jakaś szczególny... Zastanawiam się, czy było pytanie, czy to jest komentarz.
So is it a comment only or the question? So this element of this collision course, so which we say about 2050, and that is not compatible with what we are doing with the economic development. So perhaps each one of the panelists which answer the question, so we may have more questions. The first question concerning storage. Perhaps I will answer it, because we just follow very closely what is going on within the whole energy system, and particularly all these variables. And we have to start with it that there are many options of flexibility. One option, it is storage. The second question, it is changing the market. The third, it is changing the grid system and to construct the market. In Poland there is discussion now how our market should promote these units that may accommodate themselves to all these variables. And so storage, it's one of the important elements. The greatest problem is that we deviate from promotion of particular technologies. It was rather 10-20 years ago when we supported, for example, development of renewables, but now we try to open the market in order to decrease the costs, because nobody wants to pay too much for the energy, electric energy. Then the storage, it is a large potential as regards small sources at the local level. These bigger storage facilities that might be at the disposal of the operators are first too expensive, and there is no support mechanism, whereas the power market, which Andrzej criticized, it's a large subject which might be discussed for hours, but the power market, there is a neutral solution, which means that also the storage facilities may participate in the energy market, and they may be developed now. And the next step, in a few years, the regulations concerning the power grids will be also changed, and they will be forced to take advantage of the local sources, so it will be a big advantage for the prosumers and for local producers.
For the storage question, in Germany, the problem is, which is again not a technical problem, but a political problem, and it's all about power in the end, like which business model is still successful. Because we have a fight on the energy market if those who invested in fossil fuels are still on the market or not, because what I said in the beginning, we have too much energy, especially electricity. So it's a struggle about who is still in the market or not. And this is a political decision, and that's why it's so debatable at the moment whether we do a regulated coal phase out or not. But without political decision, the whole system won't work anymore. And it's the same for storage. Currently, if electricity is going into a storage system, you pay all the taxes, the Renewable Energy Act, but also the tax for electricity and everything we have on taxes there. If the electricity goes out again, you pay all the taxes again. Therefore, this is no business model at all, because it's totally stupid to store energy. But this is not due to technique or we need like other storage, it's due to a political decision. From the moment on where you say change the taxation system here on this point, it makes also sense market-wise to store energy. And this is in the moment a political decision, because if you store wind energy at a moment where you have too much wind, you can use it later. But the whole argument for keeping those energy plants which can produce energy the whole year is because renewable are too fluctual. So again, it comes to political decision making, whether you have new regulation also on storage, and it's the same as with the question if you store the electricity in cars or if you produce your own energy in your house, if you have a strong regulation that you can build only new houses and also new fabrics. I think this is very important because you have huge roofs which produce their electricity by themselves, which are forced to have a storage within their own building. Then you have a total new business case. But as long as we don't have a regulation for buildings that they actually have to produce energy, we cannot solve the problem. So here again we have the question about political decision making, and this comes to the question of the lady who's not there anymore, who asked about, does it make a difference which political party is governing, at least in Germany, but if I look at the European Union, yes it does. If you look at Spain, for a moment they said, okay, we cut all the feed-in tariff regulation, we had lawsuits against it. Now you have a new government which is saying our case in Spain is actually renewable energy, and from one day to another the policy changes. And this is also for the Renewable Energy Act. It was only possible because the Greens, and if we are frank, it was not only because of CO2, it was especially to phase out nuclear. And the next step to phase out coal, unfortunately, we were not in government anymore, so we didn't or couldn't push for this step. But all the things which handle at the moment the renewable energy is a political decision. And that's why we as Greens, for example, call for a stop of the ceiling for renewable energy, because the feed-in tariff, which the Commission is sometimes also challenging, it was important at the beginning to actually give a market for renewable energy, because the price for solar was 40 per kilowatt hour. Now, because for the new techniques, we have tenders starting from 3.6 to 5.7 cents. So coming down from 40 euro cents to 5 euro cents. This is now the market price. At this moment, it's cheaper to actually invest into renewable energy, because for coal, it would be euro 7 cents. However, people don't invest into it because they are not sure if the next government is maybe changing the laws again. That's why the whole Paris Agreement, in my point of view, is so important, of saying you need 5 years plans how you can bring down your CO2 emissions, and due to that you have like a trustful regulation that people actually invest into renewable energy, because otherwise they are too afraid. And that's why also the price of CO2 is so important, because investors need security. Brings me to the last question of the question, actually, do we need growth? Well, I believe we are currently living in a world where we do have markets. I don't see that by the year 2030, even not by 2050, we totally abolished the whole markets on Earth. That's why I work on, as a politician, to make the markets social just and in line with our environment. And that's why you need strong regulation on both fields. And we can see, it was here on the COP, which was presented, that in 19 countries you had economy growth, so GDP was rising, but CO2 emissions were dropping. So you can see that it's not an automatic coupling that you have only growth if you burn fossil fuels, but you can have also green growth. I would say also to green growth there are borders, and we have to talk about also about sufficiency and the question of saving things, but we have to actually decouple economic growth from the use of fossil fuels, and I believe this is a job what we have to do here at the COP, but also in every country within the next years.
I want to add only a very small point, and to give it to Andrzej for the Polish situation. We didn't talk enough about the future of economy and of the economy of digitalization. That will make the difference, and that will make things far more easy. Don't think about the energy market of the future in terms of the energy market of today, of these big stores. I mean, I was born in East Germany, so I know these big water saving things. And the gas savers where you can store overnight gas and things like that. This decentralization and the digitalization, there's a chapter about, a very interesting one in the Atlas, about how to, there are already smart companies around who develop apps in order to collect energy and to sell it at a certain point when it's needed in another place. So we really have to change our thinking, and I'm really glad that you managed to implement this decentralization idea into EU regulation, because this gives the chance that every person is a part of a smart energy system European-wide in the future.
About storage, very shortly. I understand. According to Bloomberg, during the most future year, the storage expenses will be decreased by 2/3. I see that storage is a relationship between the car production of heat, chill, and electricity. It should be a local combination that should act. It is what Chinese do. They have a big storage in their village for hot water, and they store energy from the fluctuating power of windmills. It is the solution that has to be discussed and to verify. If we produce electricity from renewable sources, we have overproduction, and during overproduction we would produce hydrogen and storage the hydrogen in gas networks. Now we can store 4 billion cubic meters. It is 25% what is consumed by Poland. And when we need such energy and we do not have power from renewable energy, we can use a mix of hydrogen and natural gas that used to be implemented in Silesia for city networks. As we take the report 1.5 centigrades, that is the more scientific development. If you reach zero net emission in 2050, we shall be kept within the changes we can adopt. If it works, if we manage the studies, we should reach it in 2045. But now the only serious document is that I mentioned. And to the end, I'm very worried that we only GBP take into account. Why do we not use Human Development Index? Carbon footprint. We had to be much more precise criterion whether we develop or we move back. A very famous economist said that the GDP can be an deterioration factor and because we will face an ecological disaster. Thank you for question and answers. I'm inviting to ask next three questions. So please think these will be the last ones. So think it over whether you want to ask a question because we won't have time for it later. And perhaps one panelist will answer the question because we do not have much time. We have only 10 minutes for 3 questions, 3 answers. Please ask. I'm inviting to ask questions.
Thank you. I want to come back to the concept of just transition, this idea of leaving no one behind. If we look at the EU long-term strategy, for example, in 2050, we still have some coal capacity, for example, in there. So how do we square the need of a just transition in the interest of workers while at the same time respecting the quite drastic timelines that the IPCC and all the other projections we see coming out of the Paris Agreement require from us?
Okej. Dzięki. Drugie pytanie?
Next question, please. To you. Ladies and gentlemen, please, there are no more questions.
Okay. Panie Andrzeju?
Mr. Andrzej, I have a question to you. How much we have coal accessible? For how long we have enough coal which is available to us to the end? From the end, one gentleman wants to answer. Yes, please, answer, please. Please answer. I would like to say in sarcastic way, when I was a child, there were there was nothing it will finish if people think, yes, I can survive, not during my life, but everyone is aware that unfortunately we shall come to the end of the power engineering era. Yes, I cannot see the answer. How long? Please answer. I think that the question is wrong. Because why? Because we do not combust coal at all, whether we have or not, but we shouldn't use it. I say we have only for 15 years. If we only use the coal-fired power engineering, we shall increase the import of coal from Russia, coal stolen from Donbass. There's no environmental importance. I do not agree. Thank you. I'm very glad that the discussion is very vigorous, but we do not space to continue in that formula. But panelists will stay here during the lunch, and I encourage you to take opportunity. And there was a question asked. I would like to come back.
Yeah, if I can just say a last word on that. I'm not from the Greens, I'm from the European Commission. We cannot be accused of being the most radical environmentalist organization in the world. When I look at the 12 points of the report, I have them all in my papers, actually. So I don't know if we have become radicals as well, or if it's just that there is a realization that a radical transformation is necessary, and even we are starting to work in that direction. At the moment, there's no, I don't know, physical imperative to use coal anymore, if you want an easy answer. And the costs of your renewables have fallen so much, that they are there. So the obstacles are there. They are political, they are social, etc. But there's no objective barrier that is impossible to address between now and our objectives.
Okej, bardzo
Dzięki.
dziękuję.
Thank you a lot. And you are personally satisfied with the answer. Was it a good answer for your question? I would like to make sure. Yes, perfectly. Thank you.
Słuchajcie,
My dears, we are coming to the end of our panel. I would like to invite you to make 1 minute conclusions, 1 minute to close. I would like to add one word, one electrification, because in the hopeless feeling, what kind of raw materials, what kind of fuels, gas, coal, renewables. I wrote my chapter in the Energy Atlas. It's combination of transportation and electricity generation and the heating generation. And when we are thinking what to do in future, we should think what shall be in place in 10, 20 years. I think electrification, digitalization, what was also mentioned, because it is the direction where technology go towards.
I would just mention something else. Tomorrow at the EU Pavilion, we're organizing an event which will discuss precisely these points. There will be one big event on the coal regions in transition, with representatives from the European Commission, but also from Polish regions, with Jerzy Buzek, with the Chinese as well. There will be one on democratization and decentralization with renewable energy communities, etc. Another one on innovation. So I really encourage you, if you have the access badge, to go there from 9, because I think we will have very interesting discussions. Thanks a lot for inviting me.
Dziękuję bardzo.
Well, to me, this discussion showed already that the answers are already there. It's not a question if we can fight the climate crisis and if we can go to a carbon neutral way, but if we want to go, and it's a political decision, and that's why climate marches like on the weekend are so important, that we have a big pressure, because the IPCC report was showing again that time is running, and the longer we wait, the more difficult it will be, the more expensive it will be, and especially the more unjust it will be, because those people who are the poorest on the world, but also the poorest in our countries, they suffer the most. And that's why it's not only a question of an economy, it's not only a question of climate policy, it's in the heart a question of social responsibility, and that's why we have to act now.
Bardzo dziękuję.
I would argue in the same direction as we thought. It's not a matter of technology, it's all a matter of political will and decision. And that's why it's so important to go on and to put on political pressure, not only on climate negotiation, but also in each country, in each community. And that was what is encouraging us as a foundation with 33 offices around the world to encourage actors and to enable them to have the know-how, the knowledge, and the digital technologies in order to foster these ideas, to spread the ideas, and to convince people to go for this, as I said, this really sound plan of a fossil-free Europe. And of course, we try further on to give buzzwords to the EU Commission.
Proszę Państwa, przyszłość to nie
Gentlemen, future, it's not only the past, but it's something new and better. and this battery is at our door. But it will happen if everybody joins his forces or her forces, and that everybody will notice all the benefits in their for their quality of life, and the better jobs and more jobs. But in order to make it happen, we have at every level to influence strongly so that this change comes through. If we don't do it, then we will be always in the political trap, because the governments would not like to lose the votes of miners or other workers. We may only change it in a democratic way. It's not true that the costs are too high, that we will not manage it, the transformation is bad. No, let's think and work. Thank you very much for this summary from my side. I represent here Katowice Smog Alarms, a very local organization that works with people for making the air cleaner and better in Katowice. I have two small girls at home, so that's very important for me. One of them is 4 months old only, but what's important for me in this panel, it is the question of the benefits, of the advantages. When we try to convince people, we have to tell them that we cannot stay behind, neither stay in one place. We have to move forward. When I speak with the miners, I have to have strong arguments, because it's a complete change of his life. So I'm very grateful for this panel, because I've got quite a lot of new pieces of information. They know how to talk to people. We spoke about many perspectives, about many layers of energy transformation at the European level, at the international level, at the Polish level, and also urban level and locally. And I realized that each one of these topics might involve a lengthy discussion for several days. So I encourage you once more to take advantage of the time. If you have any subject which you would like to touch more in depth, so you may just talk to the panelists just after our session, because it's a great opportunity for you. I would like to thank all the panelists and all the onlookers and listeners for this part. Thank you very much.